I want to give a special shout out to my patrons, my Bibliosprend, Bibliohowler, and Bibliomancer, and my new Bibliomancer, Romeo. Thank you so much for supporting my hobby and passion even more. I totally appreciate this. Hi everyone, Petrik here. So today's video will be about my December wrap up. In the month of December, I finished 4 books, but these 4 books made me succeed in finishing the 3 series that I wanted to finish in the month of December. I know that we are already in the year 2023, but I still want to talk a bit about the books that I finished in the month of December. Talk a bit about them in more details. And although in my December TBR video, I did say that I wanted to finish 6 books if possible, but also at the same time, I also mentioned that it is quite impossible because in December I don't read many books. So yeah, I finished 4 books, and the first book that I finished last month, this is Age of Empyre by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the 6th and final book in the Legends of the First Empire series, the prequel series to the Rhyria books, the Rhyria books 10,000 years before the events of the Rhyria books. And although I am relatively satisfied with this book, but I must admit, sadly, that some parts of this book actually kinda disappointed me. Maybe it's because I had too much of a high expectation, because I absolutely love the Rhyria books. I also totally love the Heir of Navron, which is the 3rd omnibus in the Rhyria Revelations, which comprised of Wintertide and also Persepliquis. Heir of Navron, or Persepliquis to this day, is still one of the best endings that I've read. I think it is a great example in how to finish your fantasy series properly and very satisfyingly. And because of that, I had high expectation toward Age of Empyre, especially because I think Age of War is the best book of the entire series. And as Sullivan said, Age of War concluded the first half of the Legends of the First Empire. So I obviously expect that the conclusion to the second half and also the entire series will be even better than Age of War. But it didn't end up happening that way. There is nothing wrong with the characters or the characterizations in Age of Empyre. I love them all, and also until the end of the book, I pretty much enjoyed this book thoroughly. Everything was just so compelling and engaging, and the scene depicted in this cover art, it was so satisfying to see it happen in the book. Quite epic as well. The way the plot progressed in Age of Empyre can be described as the race against time. Constantly, from the beginning of the book that starts after the cliffhanger ending of Age of Death until pretty much the end of the book. But my biggest disappointment and my issue with Age of Empyre was how some of the main characters lacked closure. It felt like they were missing 1 or 2 extra chapters for a satisfying ending or epilogue. It really felt that way to me. And Robin Sullivan said at the end of the book, this is done on purpose. And I'm just so confused. For example, Bryn is one of the main characters, maybe even the main character of the Legends of the First Empire, and the second half of the series is so focused on Bryn. But her final chapter in this book just left a lot to be desired. Now, for me, it could have been fixed with 1 more chapter, and I think Robin, Michael, and pretty much many beta readers know what that chapter would be. But at the end of this book, at the acknowledgement section, Robin said that it is not necessary to have that section because we all know what would happen already. And I just disagree with this. If we follow this logic, there's so many fantasy books that we don't have to read anymore, because we know after we read a lot of fantasy books, we know a lot of things that would happen in these books. So with this logic, we don't have to read them anymore. I just don't agree with this. And it's not only Bryn, plenty of the other characters also doesn't have any satisfying closing chapter. Only Malcolm has that. Malcolm is another crucial character in the series, and I must say that I disagree with the author saying that Legends of the First Empire is separated from the Rhyria books. It is not. Many events in the series and characters' revelation or identity actually spoil some of the plot twists in the Rhyria books. They are certainly not unrelated. They are very much related to each other. I think if I have read Legends of the First Empire without reading the Rhyria books first, I wouldn't have enjoyed this series that much. But because I have read the Rhyria books first, the Easter eggs in the series became visible and so much more enjoyable to read. Overall, I still think that Age of Empyre is a good book. It is a great conclusion to the series, but not as good as the Raria books. Personally speaking, I think none of the books in Legends of the First Empire live up to the best of the Raria books. But still, I'm glad that I have read this series. Now I have only the Rise and Fall trilogy by Michael J. Sullivan to read, and then I will be done with reading all of his books. Then the second book that I finished last month, it is The Lonesome Crown by Brian Lee Durfee. And this means that I have finished reading the 5 Warrior Angels trilogy. The Lonesome Crown was easily one of my most anticipated books of 2022, and Brian Lee Durfee somehow, even though I had very high expectation for The Lonesome Crown, somehow managed to fulfill my expectations. Not in a way that he made the story predictable, because this book, this series, is far from being predictable, even though it utilized a lot of familiar tropes in epic fantasy, like prophecies, chosen ones, and many more. But there are so many characters in the series that I thought I have gotten to know. I thought I would end up loving them thoroughly, and some I thought I would end up absolutely hating them until the end of the book. But all of these are not true. Brian Lee Durfee is really good at developing his characters, and I know that relatively quite a lot of people stopped reading the series after The Forgetting Moon because they found many of the characters to be unlikable, but I think it is quite intentional. Pretty much none of the characters in the first book are likable. I was invested in the story, but to say that I love these characters now, that's a bit of a stretch in the first book. I love Stefan and also Birmak, but I think that's about it. And Birmak is easily the MVP of the entire series. Well, him and also Lishan. Now, Lishan is one of the most despicable character in the first book. I hated Lishan so much, but I mentioned this in my review of The Blackest Heart that somehow Brian Lee Durfee managed to make me care. He managed to make me care about Lishan. And this kind of example is what happened throughout The Lonesome Crown. The characters are just unpredictable. As I said, there were characters that I absolutely hate, but in this book, I ended up, well, I must say that I can't hate them completely now. I really love the way the story progressed, and also the time of the fiery absolution that has been teased and prophesied since the first book is finally here. And the result, it was explosive. It was a massive battle that actually lasted about 300 pages long. I think I read this one on ebook, and right from the 65%, if I'm not mistaken, everything since then is relentless carnage until the end of the book. And Brian Lee Durfee has conjured some of the most vivid and brutal imagery that I've read in fantasy. So brutal. It is a dark book, really dark. But the grim and dark content of The Lonesome Crown is not an issue for me. I knew what I was getting into. I knew that this is fitting to the trilogy, and that matters a lot. I love The Lonesome Crown. I think it is a fitting and satisfying, relatively satisfying conclusion to the trilogy, because there are certainly rooms for more stories. But for now, this one is a satisfying arc. And if Brian Lee Durfee decides to write more books in this world, I will certainly read them. But if not, I am satisfied with saying that the 5 Warrior Angels trilogy have become one of my favorite trilogies. And again, this is still one of the most underrated trilogies that I've read. And finally, the last 2 books that I finished last month, it is Last of the Dragorn and also A Clash of Fates by Philip C. Quaintrell. This is the 8th and 9th book of the Echo Saga series, which means this is another series that I finally finished last month. For this one, I am very limited in what I can say here, but I will say that Last of the Dragorn, the 8th book in the series, the penultimate installment, even though it has my favorite cover art in the entire series, it is also unfortunately my least favorite installment. As far as content goes, I think this one is the one that definitely feels like it is a filler. The majority of the book, with the exception of the final quarter, just felt like it is just there to actually prolong the series. That's in my opinion anyway, and I know that Echo Saga is very underrated, but most who have read the series up to this point agreed that this book is an amazing book, and in comparison, my opinion is certainly an unpopular opinion. The final quarter of Last of the Dragon was undeniably amazing though for me, and it set up wonderfully, and A Clash of Fates, the 9th and final book in the series, is my favorite in the entire series. It is epic, and it really felt like the author has prepared a lot of things to happen in this book, in this final book, and he has successfully made them come to fruition. The battles were epic, the pacing was unputdownable. I really loved it. I haven't written a full spoiler-free review for A Clash of Fates yet. I'm a bit struggling right now in writing review for this one, because so many things I said, even in a way, either way, even the cover art is already a spoiler. So yeah, it is kind of difficult for me to write a review for this one, but I will certainly write it, hopefully within this week. But for now, I will just say that A Clash of Fates is my favorite book in the series, and that makes the Echo Saga one of my favorite completed series. If possible, I really want to make a series review of the Echo Saga on this channel. Let's see whether I can do that or not. But if not, I will just say it right now once again that you should read this series if you love classic epic fantasy that is told in a modern voice. Look, the average rating for A Clash of Fates is higher than 4.7. And this is not compiled from a low number of ratings on Goodreads. It is still 1,000. So yeah, it is an amazing book and amazing conclusion to the series. Philip C. Quaintrell has also released the prequel trilogy to the Echo Saga series last year, and I hope that I can get to that series this year. But for now, I will take a bit of a break from Verda, the world of the Echo Saga. So that's pretty much all the novels that I finished last month. Yeah, I managed to finish Legends of the First Empire, the 5 Warrior Angels trilogy, and also the Echo Saga 9-book series, all within December. It was ambitious, but I managed to do it, and I am satisfied. I also managed to slip in one short story. The title is 5 Silver Rings by Zack Argyle. I managed to finish this one last month, but this one is, I think, less than 20 pages long. It is very short. It will take you probably about 10 minutes to read, and it is impactful. It is free, and you can get it by subscribing to the author's newsletter. I will leave the link to that newsletter in the description down below. Make sure to give it a try. And because I have tried reading that short story and loved it, I will have to read the author's main trilogy someday. Threadlight trilogy, which I think is heavily inspired from, I think, Mistborn, Stormlight Archive, and also Lightbringer. As for the manga series I read in December, I managed to finish 10 volumes of Witch Hat Atelier by Kamome Shirahama. Love this manga so much. I know that it was first pitched to me as something that I should try because I love Studio Ghibli movies, but it exceeded my expectation. I thought this would be more fitting. At first, I thought this would be more fitting to younger reader, but turns out it's not. The story is pretty mature, and after doing some research on Witch Hat Atelier, apparently the demographic is actually seinen. Seinen in manga pretty much means adult readers, and I agree with this because the topics, the themes that were discussed in the 10 volumes that I read in Witch Hat Atelier, they were definitely adult oriented, even though there are nothing explicit about the content, but the heavy themes discussed are certainly something suitable for adult readers. And the artworks, oh my god, Kamome Shirahama has one of the best style of artworks I've ever read in manga, and that's saying a lot. I've read a lot of manga, no kidding. But yeah, I love this one so much, and it's kind of a shame that I don't have the 11th volume to read. I mean, the 11th volume, the English translated edition, will be published, I think, this June. But yeah, I love the 10 volumes. I love the 10 volumes that I've read so far. Loved it so much. Actually, the characters are great. The hard magic system that heavily involve drawing are constantly fun to read and learn. I actually think that Witch Hat Atelier would be suitable if you are a newcomer to manga. I think a lot of readers will love Witch Hat Atelier by Kamome Shirahama. I certainly did. So that's all the books and manga that I finished in the month of December 2022. And my favorite book of the month will have to be The Lonesome Crown by Brian Lee Durfee, the third and final book in the 5 Warrior Angels trilogy. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me today. Do let me know how many books you finished in the month of December and what are your favorite books of the month. And if you have read any of the books I mentioned, do let me know your thoughts on them. As always, thank you so much for watching and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much once again to all my patrons who keep on supporting me.